Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and we're moving to the next stage of this pandemic. As the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Here are tonight's news. A total of 280,693 coronavirus deaths have been recorded since the epidemic surfaced in China late last year, according to an AFP tally at 1900 GMT on Sunday, based on official sources. There have been at least 4,070,660 officially recorded cases across the globe. The United States is the country that has recorded most deaths at 79,058. It is followed by Britain, 31,855, Italy, 30,560, Spain, 26,621, and France, 26,380. And the Philippines Manila Mayor Francisco Isko Moreno on Monday said he is leaning towards a general community quarantine or GCQ, as he stressed that government resources are now depleting.
Buhay and kabuhayan comes together. We cannot just address COVID-19 alone as government without source. Because the existing source, is depleting already. And we're now turning into socialism. Napag-uusapan ng mga tao ngayon is always about ayuda, amelioration. We forgot to think the issue is health. So, having said that, I want to normalize naturally, daan-daan. But the next question is, how are we preparing? And what is our plan in post-lifting ECQ situation? Our city government is actively, aggressively doing mass testing by the thousands every day. Literally every day. And another way, para pag nag-open, talagang lalala. Let's accept the fact. Lalala, dadami ang pasyente. Kaya nga depende sa behavior ng tao. We're putting up so many QF. The one that we built 4 weeks ago, the Delpan Quarantine Facility, it will be duplicated. We're in employees of restaurants, employees of businesses, pwede na may quarantine. If they are found maybe false positive or false negative under RTK, we can house them so that we can help the businesses to go on a normal day. At the same time, we submit them for confirmatory tests. So we have to address buhay at kabuhayan simultaneously.
More than 2,000 individuals are being tested per day in Manila, and that eventually, if lifted to GCQ, the mayor said companies will also be given free assistance by testing their employees. He also bared that they are launching a new technology that will identify people infected with the virus within a 300-meter radius environment real time. Riot police chased protesters through Hong Kong shopping malls on Sunday as democracy activists launched Mother's Day flash mob rallies calling for independence and the city's unpopular leader to resign. Take a look. Now, the semi-autonomous Chinese city was convulsed by 7 straight months of often violent pro-democracy protests last year, with millions hitting the streets. Mass arrests and the coronavirus pandemic ushered in a period of enforced calm. But with the finance hub successfully tackling its outbreak, small protests have bubbled up once more in the last fortnight. Small flash mob demonstrations broke out in at least 8 malls throughout Sunday afternoon, prompting riot police to rush in and disperse heckling crowds of activists and shoppers. Hong Kong police arrested hundreds of people during weekend democracy protests. And that includes a 12-year-old boy, according to officials on Monday, in the first major political unrest since the coronavirus outbreak began. The disclosure came as the financial hub's pro-Beijing leader Carrie Lam vowed to overhaul the city's education system, arguing its liberal studies curriculum helped fuel last year's huge protests. On Sunday, 2 days after virus restrictions on gatherings were eased and bars and gyms allowed to reopen, riot police chased flash mob protests through multiple shopping malls. As earlier said, they later used pepper spray and batons against protesters, bystanders, and journalists in the district of Mongkok. Police said 230 people between the ages of 12 and 65 were arrested on various charges, including unlawful assembly, assaulting a police officer, and failing to produce identity documents. Others were also fined for breaching anti-coronavirus measures, banning more than 8 people gathering in public. In an interview with pro-government Tak Kung Pao newspaper published Monday, Mrs. Lam described the current secondary school program as a chicken co-op without a roof and said her government would soon unveil their plans. Now her comments are likely to inflame those Hong Kongers who fear Beijing is chipping away at the freedoms that make the city a major international draw as political tensions rise once more. In other news, an Iranian warship was hit by a friendly fire missile during naval exercises, killing 19 sailors, according to state media, and the Army said amid tensions with the U.S. in Gulf waters. The incident involving the Konarak vessel occurred on Sunday afternoon near Bandar Ijask off the southern coast of the Islamic Republic, state television's website said. Now, Tasnim news agency said in an English-language tweet that the Konarak was hit by the missile fired by another Iranian warship. The 15 injured were hospitalized in Sistan and Balochistan, according to Muhammad Mehran Aminifard, head of the province's medical university. 2 of the sailors were in intensive care, according to the semi-official news agency ISNA. And Iran's army chief and foreign minister offered their condolences to the sailors' families in separate statements. The Konarak is a logistical support vessel made in the Netherlands and purchased by Iran before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Weighing 447 tons and 47 meters long, the Handijan-class vessel is equipped with 4 cruise missiles, according to state television. It wasn't immediately clear how many crew members had been on board the warship at the time of the accident. Iran and its archenemy, the United States, have traded bars in the past year over a state of incidents involving their forces in the sensitive Gulf waters. Their latest high seas confrontation came on April 15 when the U.S. claimed Iranian boats had harassed its Navy ships in the waterway. In France, people from Monday morning were able to walk outside without filling in a permit for the first time in nearly 8 weeks. Teachers will start to return to primary schools, and some shops, including hair salons, also reopen. Take a look. Bars, restaurants, theaters, and cinemas will, however, remain closed. France has registered its lowest number of daily deaths from COVID-19 since the beginning of confinement, with 70 people recording as having died from the virus in the 24 hours from Saturday to Sunday. There have been 28,380 deaths since the start of the pandemic in France, 16,642 at hospitals, and 9,738 in care homes. Now, these figures don't include the number of deaths from the virus in private homes. And many Spaniards revel in being able to visit outdoor terraces and cafes again after months under one of the world's toughest lockdowns, although virus hotspots such as Madrid and Barcelona remain under wraps. On Monday, Spain's health ministry confirmed 123 more COVID-19 deaths, the lowest number since March 18. In total, 26,744 fatalities in Spain have been so far confirmed. The country also registered 373 new active cases, the lowest daily rise in more than 2 months. Spain has confirmed a total of 227,436 active cases Of those cases, nearly 123,000 had to be hospitalized and more than 137,000 have recovered. Spain has the second most confirmed cases in the world and one of the highest COVID-19 death rates per capita. And shopping boulevards were once again populated with pedestrians in Greece, while other parts of Europe, from the Netherlands to Switzerland and Croatia, youngsters headed back to the classroom after weeks at home.
We must reverse.
Meanwhile, Britain plotted a path to normality. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is Grace Rivera. Hello, Grace.
Hi, Alma. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Good to see you.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you. So here are the updates in the United Kingdom. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson yesterday announced a phased plan to ease a national coronavirus lockdown, with schools and shops to begin reopening from 1st of June as long as infection rates stay low. In a televised address, Johnson expresses his gratitude to the British public. Let's listen in.
Reverse rapidly the awful epidemics in care homes and in the NHS, and though the numbers are coming down sharply now, there is plainly much more to be done. And if we're to control this virus, then we must have a world-beating system for testing potential victims and for tracing their contacts. And though we have made progress in satisfying at least some of the conditions I have given, we have by no means fulfilled all of them. And so, no, this is not the time simply to end the lockdown this week. Instead, we're taking the first careful steps to modify our measures. In step 2, at the earliest by June the 1st, after half-term, we believe we may be in a position to begin the phased reopening of shops and to get primary pupils back into schools, in stages beginning with reception, year 1 and year 6. And step 3, at the earliest by July, and subject to all these conditions and further scientific advice, if and only if the numbers support it, we will hope to reopen at least some of the hospitality industry and other public places, provided they're safe and enforce social distancing. And to prevent reinfection from abroad, I'm serving notice that it will soon be the time, with transmission significantly lower, to impose quarantine on people coming into this country by air. And it's because of your efforts to get the R down and the number of infections down here that this measure will now be effective.
Johnson also announced plans to introduce quarantine for people arriving in Britain by air to prevent new infections from abroad. Johnson's office said France would be exempt from the quarantine after Paris excluded Britain from its own similar plans, while media reports suggest there will also be a waiver for Ireland. Almost 7 weeks after a nationwide stay-at-home order was put in place, more than 31,800 people died, the worst toll in Europe and second only to the United States. Boris Johnson, who himself spent a week in hospital with COVID-19, said the measures had come at a colossal cost to our way of life, but said it would be madness to squander the progress by moving too soon, and unveiled a conditional plan to ease the measures in England in the months ahead. Starting this week, he said the government would be actively encouraging people to return to work, only if they could not work from home, such as the manufacturing or construction industries. Unlimited outdoor exercises would also be allowed from this Wednesday, with sports such as golf, tennis, and fishing permitted as long as they only involve members of the same household. In the second phase, Johnson said nurseries and children up to the age of 11 could start to return to school from the 1st of June at the earliest, and some shops could also start to reopen. However, officials warned that pubs are not likely to open for months and older school children are likely to see any return to classes until September. If there are problems, we will not hesitate to put on the brakes, Johnson said. We have been through the initial peak, but it is coming down the mountain that is often more dangerous. Johnson has also received mixed messages and has been failing to take the outbreak seriously at the start, still shaking hands with people early in March and delaying the imposition of a lockdown. But there are growing demands from his own MPs to get the economy moving again, particularly after the Bank of England predicted a 14% slump in the British GDP this year. Johnson paved the way for his phased plan by issuing new public advice, placing the old "Stay Home, Save Lives" slogan in favor of advice to stay alert. But it drew criticism from governments in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, which are responsible for the lockdowns in their own nations. Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon, in particular, warned infection rates in her country remained too high to ease up even a little bit on the confinement advice. Alma?
All right. Thank you very much, Grace, for your time. Stay well, stay healthy. Looking forward to more updates from London.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Grace Rivera, EBC correspondent in the United Kingdom. We live in interesting times.
To Russia now, a new record of daily confirmed infections was set and number of deaths surpassed 2,000 now. We have a report coming in. Joining us live from Moscow is Emmy Coloma. Hello, Emmy.
Hello, Alma.
Hi.
Good evening there.
Good evening. What are your updates for us?
According to the official coronavirus data website set up by the Russian government, 11,656 people tested positive in the last 24 hours, with a total now at 221,344. Russian officials say the number of cases is down to rigorous testing, with 5.6 million tests completed to date and almost half of people with coronavirus showing no symptoms. In Moscow, the mayor has announced some industries and construction sites can begin work, but masks and gloves with mandatory starting Tuesday. Russia's neighbors, Ukraine and Georgia, begin to relax restrictions Monday, while Kazakhstan lifted its state of emergency. Meanwhile, a fire broke out in a retirement home in the Moscow region, killing at least 9 people, with several more in intensive care in hospital. Emergency service said the fire in the privately owned care home in the town of Krasnogorsk started around midnight, Sunday to Monday, and was extinguished within an hour. Russian agencies said 37 people were in the building at the time of the fire. Commercial newspaper said many of the care home residents were not mobile and the employees were unable to carry them out from the smoke, despite the fire being small. Meanwhile, celebrations marking the end of World War II are scaled back in Russia, which usually hosts grand military parades for the event a day later than the rest of Europe, postponing a Red Square parade. And it was reported that during the parade, at least 376 Russian cadets have been infected with the coronavirus after participating in rehearsal for the postponed Victory Day parade in Moscow Red Square. Rockets cited participants and their relatives as saying that the virus broke out among officers and cadets in at least 5 elite Russian military academies and 1 regiment out of the more than 40 involved following the parade rehearsal. Alma,
All
back to
right.
you.
Thank you very much, Emmy. Thank you so much for your time. Stay safe and stay
This-
alert.
Thank you. This is Emi Coloma from Moscow, Russia. We live in interesting times.
Over in Malaysia, the conditional MCO or movement control order has been extended in areas with rising number of infections. We have more. Joining us live from Kuala Lumpur is Ruby Tinawin. Hello, Ruby.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening. Good to hear from you finally.
Yes, for the latest news here in Malaysia, it has been almost 2 months that Malaysians persevered under the movement control order and then the conditional movement control order enforced by the government since March 18 to break the chain of the COVID-19 infection in the country. The announcement by Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin yesterday that the ongoing CMCO, which was initially scheduled to expire on May 12, is extended for another 4 weeks until June 9. A decision made based on the guidelines drawn up by the World Health Organization and advice from the Ministry of Health and the National Security Council. This also means that all existing standard operating procedures will be maintained until June 9. Muhyiddin said any changes in regards to the existing SOPs or economic sectors allowed to resume operations will be announced from time to time. Following the extension announcement, several other important points mentioned by the Prime Ministers are as follows. Mass movement across state borders would not be allowed, noting that several festivals will fall during the MCO period. Now, for the first time in the history, the norms of the Hari Raya celebration are going to change 360 degrees. With the absence of Balik Kampong or back to village exodus and the open houses. As said by the Prime Minister, the feeling of sadness and despair of not being able to return home for the upcoming festive season is perfectly understandable, but in the interest of the public safety and health, Balik Kampong or back to villages, interstate travel will not be allowed. Now, visitation among neighborhood in the same area is now permitted, but with a maximum of 20 people at one time. He advised that people to stay away from crowds and confined spaces, as well as to maintain safe distancing when in conversation with others. Now, the SOP for religious premises such as temples will be announced soon, so people may visit and exercise their religion again. Husband and wives who also stay in different states will be allowed leeway to do interstate travel, which include travel to Sabah and Sarawak via the Gerak Malaysia app or application at local police stations. Now, other health appeals are also given extension until 31st May this year. Now, today is the 55th day of the MCO and the 8th day of CMCO. The pandemic curve is getting flatter. There is more green areas and the number of COVID-19 recovery cases is encouraging. Yesterday, 96 patients were allowed to leave the hospital, bringing the total number of patients to have recovered from COVID-19 to 5,025 cases, which is 75.5% of the total number of 6,656 cases. Meanwhile, the government has not ruled out the possibility of enforcing the enhanced movement control order in isolation in areas that see a rise in COVID-19 cases during the conditional MCO period. That has now been extended to June 9. That was the announcement made by the Prime Minister. He advised people against becoming contented as the country is still under the CMCO. The result of which, he said, will only show in the next few weeks. He also advised people to comply with the SOPs introduced by the government and going outdoors only if there is a real need to do so. Muhyiddin also said that of the 1,178 divisions, zones, and precincts in the country, 94.4% have been categorized as green areas, 5.2 as yellow, and only 4 districts or 0.34% as red. The Prime Minister advised people living outside the red zone not to go there yet to avoid any exposure, and also reminded the people in the green zones to not think that they are safe and can move about freely. He said COVID-19 virus is an invisible silent enemy that can strike at any time and anywhere. Now, in other news, the Malaysian Employers Federation foresees a dramatic rise in the number of people becoming self-employed in online part-time or part-time freelance work because of the COVID-19 crisis. Shamsuddin Bardan, Executive Director of the Malaysian Employers Federation, said in an interview that most employers were considering a reduction of their workforce as the pandemic has caused the economy to shrink. He added that currently there are about 400,000 self-employed in the country. And due to the difficulties of employment, the number is expected to grow up to 2.8 million this year. A recent survey by the SME Association of Malaysia found that 23% of SMEs would downsize their businesses, while 28% said they would restructure, with only 19% believing they would be able to resume operations as usual. According to AMPEC research, as retrenchment exercises begin to pick up the pace, Malaysia's unemployment rate could rise from 3.3% to between 3.4 and 3.6% this year. The rising unemployment rate is likely to push people into the gig economy, which includes the e-hailing sector, with companies such as Grab and My Car. Other popular gig platforms include Lazada, Carousel, Airbnb, and Foodpanda. Now, Shamsuddin also said many industry players switched to digitalization as a means to survive and grow and to tackle the economic crisis. He said that with the rise of demand in technology, certain academic qualifications may not be relevant in the near future. Alma?
Much, Ruby, for your updates, and I'll see you tomorrow. Keep safe and stay healthy.
Thank you very much. Reporting live here in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, this is Ruby Tinawin. We live in interesting times.
And over in Japan, the country is considering lifting the state of emergency declaration in most prefectures this month. We have a report coming in from Dennis Liu.
Hello, Alma. Good evening.
Good evening, Dennis.
And also good evening to all our televiewers. Here are my updates. Japan ICE lifting emergency outside major prefectures. Japan considers lifting the state of emergency declaration in most prefectures this month, although it will keep urging caution in Tokyo and some other areas. Economy Minister Yasutoshi Nishimura said many prefectures have been seeing no fresh infections lately. Nishimura said a declining trend in the weekly number of new infections and the number of new cases on a per capita basis will be among evaluation criteria for the lifting. Japan extended its nationwide state of emergency last week to the end of May, but said it would reassess the situation. Also, a report on NHK said that Japan's public health authorities will launch a new online system this week to improve information sharing on people infected with the coronavirus. The new system was developed by the Health Ministry, wherein doctors who identify infected patients will be able to promptly share information by entering it on a tablet or other device. The new system will also monitor the number of tests conducted for possible infections. Health Ministry officials say they will test launch the system in 21 municipalities this week. They also plan to expand operations nationwide by the end of May. Japan's health authorities say the country saw 17 new cases of the new coronavirus and 9 deaths on Sunday. The number of confirmed infections stands at 15,847. On the lighter side, as we fight the spread of the coronavirus, Alma, in some areas in Japan, particularly in Kawasaki City, a unique drive-through service was made to offer flowers to mothers on Mother's Day. A long line of cars took turns to receive carnation or gerbera bouquets. The flower industry was one of the affected businesses as events canceled and customers are required to stay home to avoid the COVID-19 infection. This is the latest for now. Back to you, Alma.
Dennis, for that sweet report. And happy Mother's Day to Tyra and the kids. Give my love to them.
Thank you very much. To you, Alma, and to all the mothers around the world. Reporting from Tokyo, Japan Live, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Dennis. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
It says the best defense is still containment.
We are in uncharted territory.
Island volume 450. FI on to 100%. Standing by. Constructioning.
Ida came back from her trip in Wuhan, China. She is a positive carrier of the coronavirus.
Hi, I'm Lorna.
Lorna is Ida's cousin. She can be a family member, a friend, a relative, a colleague, or anything related to Ida.
Oh, hi, I'm Faye.
Faye is not related to Ida. They don't know each other. She can be a stranger Ida meets on the train, in the supermarket, movie house, or in any public place. Now, Ida is in the hospital and is being treated, and Lorna is placed in quarantine. Ida doesn't know Faye. Lorna doesn't know Faye. And Faye doesn't even know anything.
Hi, I'm Innocencio.
Innocencio has no contact with any virus carrier. But if he goes out, it takes at least 14 days for the symptoms to show on Faye. This is the purpose of a community quarantine or lockdown, to give time for the healthcare professionals to find Fe and all those she had close contact with, and to keep Inocencio from contracting the virus. Let's stop the spread of the COVID-19.
We salute all our frontliners and healthcare workers. We are with you in this fight against COVID-19. I am Tyronel Pililu from EDC Japan Bureau, because we live in interesting times.
New York Governor Andrew Cuomo announced that 3 young New Yorkers have died of the disease linked to the coronavirus. Actually, a 5-year-old boy in New York State has also died from a rare inflammatory disease believed to be caused by the new coronavirus. Take a look.
So, first thing is about ticket purchasing. So, we are going to limit the number of attendees we have in the park on any given day. This is really to help us with social distancing and also to follow our
While rare, we're seeing some cases where children affected with the COVID virus can become ill with symptoms similar to the Kawasaki disease or toxic shock-like syndrome that literally causes inflammation in their blood vessels. This past Thursday, a 5-year-old boy passed away from COVID-related complications, and the State Department of Health is investigating several other cases that present similar circumstances. This is the last thing that we need at this time, with all that's going on, with all the anxiety we have. Now, for parents to have to worry about whether or not their youngster was infected. And again, symptoms that don't even seem like the symptoms we associate with COVID-19. So we still have a lot to learn about this virus. And there are 73 cases that the Department of Health, Dr. Zucker, is now studying. But the illness has taken the lives of 3 young New Yorkers. So this is new, and it's developing.
In New Zealand, the country will move to coronavirus level 2. In an exclusive interview with New Zealand's MP, Ms. Jeannie Anderson, she gave us the breaking news that New Zealand, at 11:59 p.m. on Wednesday, most of level 2 will be enacted. And much of the economy will open, including restaurants, malls, cinemas, shops, health services, and hairdressers. Let's listen in.
Well, breaking news tonight in New Zealand is that the Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has announced that New Zealand will be moving into level 2 within the next 48 hours. So that's big news for New Zealanders. That means life as we knew it before COVID-19 came to New Zealand and the world. It'll mean that our lives start to take a lot more normal shape. Albeit there will still be a big need for physical distancing and for high hygiene, and also for anybody who is displaying any symptoms to remain home.
So what criteria would be followed in deciding to lift alert level 3?
So that decision has been taken today. Yes. That there has been a very small number of increasing cases over the past week, and so New Zealand Cabinet made a decision today that on Thursday New Zealand will go to alert level 2, and that means schools, it means businesses, it means public gatherings of a limited number are able to take place.
Do you think public complacency will be a problem?
Look, the Prime Minister has said right from the start that New Zealand has had a team of 5 million. We have worked incredibly well together to make sure that we save lives. New Zealand has done an amazing job of that to date, and I'm confident that we will continue to do a great job in that space.
Yes, and Now, the number of new cases has been in single digits since mid-April, with 3 new infections recorded on Monday. Under Level 2 restrictions, international borders remain closed, but life domestically will return to something approaching normality. While social distancing must still be followed, the advice that people isolate themselves at home and stick to your bubble will no longer apply. Those aged over 70 will be allowed out again after more than 7 weeks of mandatory quarantine. Domestic travel will be allowed, providing a boost to the crippled tourism industry, and schools will fully reopen next Monday. Bars will not be back in business until May 21, giving them extra time to ensure they can keep patrons properly separated. And after more than a month without reporting any new cases, Wuhan, the central Chinese city where the outbreak first emerged, reports 5 new infections. Mainland China has registered no new coronavirus deaths for nearly a month. The cases added to fears China could be facing a new wave of infections as restrictions continue to ease in some other parts of the country. 5 new infections were confirmed in one residential district of Wuhan, the central Chinese city where the virus was initially detected late last year and which emerged from its own lockdown roughly 4 weeks ago, following dramatically dwindling numbers. Authorities also issued stay-at-home orders and travel bans in Shulan, a city of around 670,000 people in northeastern China, after 3 new infections were confirmed there. The disease first emerged late last year, sweeping through Wuhan city and surrounding Hubei province, killing thousands and sickening many more. Authorities in Wuhan imposed draconian restrictions on travel and movement in what appeared to have been a successful bid to quash the outbreak. Now that lockdown eased in recent weeks as officials said the disease was under control, with travel to and from the city now allowed. Eagle News will be right back.
COVID-19 is an infectious disease caused by a new coronavirus introduced to humans for the first time. It is spread from person to person, mainly through the droplets produced when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. These droplets can land in the mouths or noses of people who are nearby. These droplets are too heavy to travel far in the air. They only travel approximately 1 meter and quickly settle on surfaces. This is the reason person-to-person spread is happening mainly between close contacts. The exact time that the virus can survive on surfaces is not yet known. So it is wise to clean surfaces regularly, particularly in the vicinity of people infected with COVID-19. Hands touch many surfaces, which can be contaminated with the virus. You should therefore avoid touching your eyes, nose, or mouth, since contaminated hands can transfer the virus from the surface to yourself. When coughing or sneezing, cover your mouth and nose with the bend of your elbow or use a disposable tissue. If a tissue is used, discard it immediately into a closed bin. The most effective way to prevent the spread of the new coronavirus is to clean your hands frequently with an alcohol-based hand rub or soap and water. This will eliminate the virus if it is on your hands. Stay healthy and prevent the spread of COVID-19.
Welcome back. Shanghai Disneyland reopened on Monday following more than 3 months of coronavirus shutdown, and as China moves nearer to normality and Walt Disney Company seeks to plug the flow of red ink caused by the pandemic. Andrew Balstein, Senior Vice President of Operations at the resort, said the vast majority of attractions and facilities were open and that they will be adding more and more as time goes on. Take a look.
First thing is about ticket purchasing. So we are going to limit the number of attendees we have in the park on any given day. This is really to help us with social distancing and also to follow our local regulations here. So we will limit the number of attendees, which means we're asking all of our guests to make a reservation before they come to the park. So you can do that in a couple different ways. We have data tickets that are our normal tickets for the day. So that has a date, has a reservation. We're able to purchase those in advance only. We will not have tickets available here at the park at the ticket booths as normal. Purchase them through our normal direct channels or our travel trade partners. That's where you get the tickets from. We do have the vast majority of our attractions and rides available. Most of our shows, our restaurants, our shops, our guest services will all be available here starting today. However, there will be a few things that we will not be offering. Mainly some interactive children playground areas, water play, those kinds of experiences we want to avoid at the beginning. In addition, due to social distancing concerns, we want to avoid large group gatherings. And in that sense, parades, nighttime spectaculars tend to bring a lot of people together to see those types of experiences. So again, at the beginning, we will not be offering either one of those.
Now, Disney said there would be increased frequency of sanitization and disinfection, and that the park will limit or suspend performances that often include interaction between visitors and characters such as Mickey Mouse. Now, despite the measures and persistent fear of new infections, tickets for the first day sold out within minutes after going on sale last Friday, according to Chinese state media. Disney shut the Shanghai park in late January, followed by others in the United States, France, Japan, and Hong Kong. Disney CEO Bob Chapek said last week that, quote, "We are seeing encouraging signs of a gradual return to some semblance of normalcy in China." Disney has meanwhile delayed the release of more than a dozen major films as cinemas have closed. Revenues from new streaming platform Disney Plus have helped limit the damage, however, as home confinement has effectively provided an enormous captive audience. And more positive news, one balloon artist in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, is making waves by coloring Philly with hope. El Aguilar has the story.
I actually started doing balloon installation. I was seeing a lot of inspiration photos, all air. There's no helium.
In this time of coronavirus crisis, a Filipino-American artist is bringing joy and lifting spirits in the lower North Philadelphia neighborhood of Fairmont.
So I put one on my front of our home in Fairmont here in Philadelphia, and I posted up on our social media.
Jace Florescio, a mother of two, motivated by a story of kids trying to spot a rainbow on the block to cheer them up, all she wanted was to give color and hope to her neighbors who, like they, are sheltered in place.
The responses were like, "Thank you so much for brightening up our community." They always look forward to their walks when they go outside to get fresh air, and it really it's just really touching me here, and I'm just so grateful.
Suddenly, in the midst of uncertainty, Florescia's one-year-old business bloomed. Neighbors, those stuck at home in quarantine and lockdown, reached out to her, requesting to rainbow somebody's home.
As I posted up on my social media, I was getting a lot of requests, and from there it was just a positive chain reaction, and a lot of people were getting them for their neighbors. A lot of people were getting them for our frontliners right now during this pandemic that we're in, and a lot of them are for birthdays.
This pandemic definitely puts Florescio on a positive side. Not only she's filling the neighborhood with rainbow, the turn of events actually helped her and her family cope in this time of distress.
This is actually, I want to say, the busiest we've been since during this pandemic. We never thought we would be this busy.
These colorful balloons will not go up, and away. These rainbow-colored balloons will stay on the ground to color Philly with hope. And as for the grateful artist, all she can say is,
Salamat. Thank you so much.
For Eagle News, El Aguilar reporting, we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Elle. And before we close, we'll leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
Mga kababayan, naharap na naman po tayo sa mabigat na pagsubok na ito. Ito yung COVID-19.
I hope everyone's okay. I hope everyone's safe.
Nandito po kami para hikayatin pa po kayo na maging matibay.
Mas maging matatag po tayo and just stay positive po sa lahat po ng nangyayari ngayon.
Mga mahal kong kababayan, lampasan po